Welcome to Project Rexy Boy, where we are going to take this 3D printed mold and turn it into this dinosaur. Stick around.
Hold on to your hats, everybody, because we are launching straight into this project. Here I have some small pour resin with some green glitter, and the mold that my partner 3D printed for me is made out of TPU. The mold actually did super fine, and it survived the pour.
Well, this little dino is ready to be popped out of this mold, and we're going to see for the first time how it's worked. So I found it a little bit tricky to get him out. He is stuck pretty good, and I shudder to think what would have happened if I had not put or prepped the mold surface with a layer of PVA glue. Shudder to think. However, we will make progress. Bruh, it's taken 20 minutes off camera to get to this point. So I've managed to loosen all of the perimeter around, but because of the nature of the mold, it's not obviously silicone, so it won't like pop out and reverse itself. It's it's just really hard. Peekaboo! All right, we seem to be getting there. You can see how we've got that layer of PVC glue that was put on the mold before I poured the resin to kind of assist with taking it out. Yeah, if we didn't put that on, I think we would be quite in a pickle. Hooray, we did it. So we have little Rex free of the little Rex mold. Tried to be as careful as I could so I could use it again. I'm glad I poured it nice and thick because I had to be quite aggressive with it in its removal, and I think if I had made it thinner it may have snapped. So the areas we found difficult were these ones here that are raised because they kind of penetrated into that layer of resin and got kind of stuck there because they're really deep. They're a lot deeper than you think by looking at the mold. And so those got stuck in quite well and were the hardest to remove, but we got there in the end. So you can tell, obviously, this has been 3D printed. You can't get a smooth surface with 3D printing. You can see this translated, obviously, to our little dinosaur. So it's going to need some good sanding and maybe a flood coat to get it nice and shiny and smooth like the back end here. So I've had to put our little Rexy in a little bathtub with some dish soap because I'm finding it really difficult to sit there and peel off the PVA. But I can already see that this little water bath is going to work because it's loosening up the PVA glue. Honestly, it's been like 30 seconds. And I'll give it a good little scrub with this little bad boy, get into all of those little print lines from the mold, and I reckon you'll be clean as a whistle. So, I'd like to introduce you all to Rex. He's just come out of his bath. He is PVA glue free. So, we are now ready for a light sand. I'm thinking I'm going to maybe flood these with some paint or acrylic marker or something like that, these little indents, and then put another coat of resin on top until we get it nice and clear and see-through. I have some watered down acrylic paint. Never used something like this before, so we're going to see how we go. But I've decided to flood the different sections. So I needed to water down the acrylic paint so that it would actually flow into where I need it to flow. So we're going to see how that works. So far so good. Here's Rexy all flood-lined. So just waiting for those to dry, and then I will clean up the top surface, give it a really good sand, and hopefully get that white overflow that's come out of the lines. You can sort of see there. I tried to clean some of them up, but it was just a little bit more tricky than I anticipated, so I have to wait for him to dry and then take a sander to it. Giving old Rexy Boy a sand with about 120 grit here, and this is where I start to kind of realize all the little air bubbles and stuff that went into the flood lines from that pipette and acrylic paint method. They just left things really bumpy and bubbly, and it just wasn't a very good look. So you can see the bubbles there in the outline.
paint even ended up coming off after being handled for a little while. So it was definitely back to the drawing board to see what else we were going to do to get those outlines. This is where we're at with little Rexy Boy after several attempts at the outlining in different ways. So this particular one that we're on at the moment is glitter outline with the flood lines done with Mod Podge glue and coated in glitter. Now we're going to give it its like 15th sand and see if we can get this excess stuff off here, and hopefully those lines will become nice and crisp. You can kind of see what you're going to end up with these little lines all done. They're a little sharper on the inside. Didn't take too well on the outside, but I am so totally out of ideas. We are continuing on with what is quite possibly my favorite part of the process, and that is adding another layer of resin after you've done a good sand. What it does is it brings out the beautiful colors in the glitter again, which you thought you lost. It leaves that sort of glass-like finish. You can see we've got a better contrast now between the green and the silver glitter all the way around, and it is looking really stunning at the moment, despite how long it's taken us to get here, of course. This is what Rexy is looking like after his flood coat on the front. It's all dried. It looks really pretty. We just got to get the back now to match, but we're also going to address the sides as well. Rah. So here's a Rexy Boy all rinsed, and he's now ready for a good old dunk in some resin. I've got him on this little hook here, which is this super complicated piece of machinery called a paperclip. And we're going to hang him on this state-of-the-art drying line. This little guy has been coated in resin, is now having a little bit of a drip before we hang him on our superior drying rack system to dry. Rexy has been drying overnight. He's been hanging out, and we are going to see how he is doing this morning. So he's looking all right. We've got some serious drops happening, so I'm going to resin him flat and do a flood coat like I should have done in the start, but I did the drip coat because I wanted it to correct some of the areas along the side, which kind of worked. So it wasn't a complete and total bust, but now we just need to do a proper flood coat on top and on the bottom. Day 194 of Project Rexy Boy. It's actually probably just day like 8 or 9 or something, but it feels like it's been an eternity. He has had a flood coat on the back, and that is absolutely worked wonders for him. And you can see there, compared to yesterday when I showed you the streakiness, that's all one solid shiny glass-like finish. So let's compare that to the front. So you can see the front has, let me get the right light, some streaks through it. It's not as smooth. So there, you can see the little streaks all through it. So what we're going to do is give him the front the same treatment as we gave the back. And then hopefully Project Rexy Boy will come to a close. I spy a little Rexy Boy, and I think that last flood coat on top has done the trick. Let's bring him out into the sun. There we go. Sparkle there. Nice and smooth glass-like finish. I do believe this little dino is ready for the finishing touches. Rah. I have brought Project Rexy in to have some final touches, which involve trying to attach some form of keyring to him. Our little hole that we reserved for the keyring to go into has been filled with resin, both back and front. So we're going to have to take a trusty little drill bit and a trusty little screwdriver and get that hole sorted. Just really gently all the way through. And that's really good for us. Okay. We have our hole back
And now we are going to see if we can attach some form of keyring to it. So our issue with little Rex is that he is quite thick. And what ends up happening with thick pieces is they're very hard to get rings that are big enough. So I was thinking that maybe one way around that is this little beaded clasp situation. After what feels like forever, we have finally finished Project Rexy Boy. And here he is. Nice and shiny, nice and sparkly, both front and back. It took us a while to get to this point, lots of trial and error with this one. So the reason why we did Project Rexy Boy was we wanted to test to see if you could use a 3D printed mold for resin. Long answer is yes. Short answer is there are better ways. Obviously, that's why they make silicone molds. But the idea was born because I had put an order through for a whole bunch of molds because I didn't have any, and they weren't going to come for about a week or so, and I was starting to get way too excited to start doing some resining. And so my partner, who does lots of different 3D printing, was like, oh, I'll just print you one. I have this special like plastic material. So he did, and we went with the Rexy mold, which you saw at the start of the video. The hardest part for this guy, like I said, was, you know, the outlining inside and around his little body. I did try several different methods, several different colors off camera as well. None of them seemed to kind of work properly. So this sort of final glitter method that we established with PVA glue, Mod Podge glue and glitter, sort of seemed to work the best. Would I do this again? Like if the mold was cute enough, I reckon I would give it a go. With 3D printing, you're never going to get a smooth surface as you would with silicone. So it's always going to come out with the print lines, the print lines on it that you have to kind of work to remove. And you can do that by sanding it down. You can do that by flood coating it and things like that as well. Another thing I learned with this little guy is to not pour so thick. I reckon maybe 2/3 of this would have been enough because it really impeded what we could use as the keyring part. So I could only use this little beaded chain situation where what I really wanted to use was this keyring, but it wouldn't fit through there because it's too thick. So definitely we'll pour a lot thinner next time. What I do love is the glitter. I think the glitter mix was beautiful. I think the contrast between the silver and the green glitter up close is really pretty. From far away, it kind of all just blends in, and I think that's just because it's glitter on glitter. Done. We did it. We got there in the end. If you've stuck around this far, thank you so much for experimenting with me, and I will see you on the next one.